about factor labels, it is clear, it is formulaic, and if you check your units, these problems will solve themselves. So let's do one of the practice together. Okay, so the first one we're going to do how many moles of carbon are in 300 grams of carbon. That's what we want to know. Because it's factor label, we do the same thing every single time. It's predictable. I like predictability. We start with, okay, so we're starting off with our given. Always, we want units in chemical down below to cancel. So what units in chemical, Kylie? Grams of carbon. You might think it sounds ridiculous that I keep saying units and chemical, and you're thinking like, it's all carbon. Why do I have to write carbon? Because in a couple chapters we'll be dealing with factor labels that are 5-step and where you have multiple chemicals. So I want you to be in the habit of writing down the chemical, because if you don't get in that habit now, I can guarantee you will screw it up later. So it's just a habit that I want you to build, and it's good form. It allows you to go back and follow your work easily. It also allows me to follow your work easily for grading and partial credit. So we're putting grams of carbon on the bottom. We want to end up in moles of carbon. Wyatt, what's going to go on the top? Units in chemical. We're going to put moles of carbon. And you got to the next piece, which is the first commandment of doing factor label conversions. Thou shalt not ever put any number except 1 next to moles unless it's your given. 1 mole of carbon. How many grams of carbon is that? Lucas, where do I get that information?
Your periodic table.
From my periodic table. Carbon is one of the ones that you'll all probably have memorized by next week because we use it a lot. 12.01 grams of carbon is equal to 1 mole of carbon. Okay, raw answer is, drum roll. Okay, so we got 24.97918. I think I have 401. It probably goes on and on and on forever, but the calculator runs out of places. How many sig figs can we have, Michael? That's addition and subtraction. So we're going to have 4 sig figs, because 4 is we only have one given. We only have one number we're being given, so that 4 sig figs is going to govern our. That's going to govern the sig figs we can have in our answer. This is an interesting one. So when we round this, what do we get? We're rounding that 7 based on what comes after it. Oh no, never mind. It's not interesting. I thought it was for a moment. Okay. What's our final answer, Jeremy? 24.98 moles of carbon. Okay. The gospel of factor label comes in here. If before you start to do any calculations, if you set this thing up and you go back through and you look at all your units and you say, yes, grams of carbon cancels, yes, I'm in the units that I want for my answer, it will solve itself. That is the beauty of factor labels. They are so clear because if you lay it out and you set it up and you check your units, it'll always solve itself. And it was at this point many, many years ago that a young man in the back row went, amen! Okay, it's the gospel of factor label. But it's true. It will solve itself. So regarding the question on sig figs, conversion factors never count for sig figs. So, conversion if that 1 counted for sig figs, we'd only have 1 sig fig. And conversion factors in general are kind of assumed to have almost unlimited sig figs, so we don't count conversion factors for or against our sig figs. Our given is what counts for or against our sig figs. Okay, other questions? We're now going to go the whole way through GMA. So I use the GMA mnemonic. I mean, it shifts a little bit, but it's a good way to just sort of generally remember the outline. If you're going from grams to moles, that's 1 step. If you're going from moles to grams, that's 1 step. If you're going from atoms to moles, that's 1 step. If you're going from moles to atoms, that's 1 step. What the GMA thing does for you is remind you that if you're going from atoms to grams, that's a 2-step. And if you're going from grams to atoms, that's a 2-step. The other thing that GMA reminds you of is you always have to go through moles. You cannot get from grams to atoms without going through moles. It doesn't work. Okay, so it is a handy mnemonic. Let's actually do number 4 together, since I accidentally gave you a problem that was grams to atoms. So let's do that one. Okay, so we're told that we're given 12.3 grams of calcium. We want to know how many atoms of calcium that is. What's our first step in any factor label? Somebody who has no shoelaces. Who has no shoelaces? Put the given in that first box. 12.3 grams of calcium. Next box, down to cancel. And remember, GMA, we want to get to atoms of calcium. What do we have to go through? Moles. Okay, so units and chemical down and below to cancel. Somebody wearing black or gray who I have not heard from in the second round. Wow, that's almost everybody. Okay. Jaden, you want to take it?
Which one?
Units and chemical for here. Yep.
1.
Don't give me a number.
Oh, grams. Calcium, you said?
Grams calcium. Grams calcium. And I recommend doing this without putting in numbers yet, because once you look at the units picture, then you can kind of go back and remember where you need to put numbers in. Okay, we're going through moles. If we're coming from grams, we cannot go straight to atoms. What's going to be in the top of this center box? Units and chemical. Kylie. Moles of calcium. Yep, moles of calcium. Okay, now I'm not putting in any numbers yet. I'm just dealing with units and chemicals right now. What's going to go in the bottom box on the last square there? Moles of calcium. And I mean, that's kind of a given because no, not a given. Don't use that word inappropriately, Moser. It's kind of an obvious one because we know that we always have to go down and 1 over to cancel. So we have moles of calcium. What do we want to end up in? What's going to go on the top? Atoms of calcium. Okay, so now we're ready to plug in numbers. This is just like with metric conversions where I like to do things before I can do something stupid. So I'm immediately going to look at all my conversion factors and say, what's the only thing that ever goes in front of moles? 1. Boom, boom. I have blocked myself from making a stupid mistake. Okay, grams to moles. What's the relationship and where do I get the information? Where? Periodic table. So grab them. What's the molar mass of calcium? What number's going to go in there?
40.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You can always be more specific. I tend to round to 2 decimal places on my molar masses. Okay, so we have 40.08 grams of calcium equals 1 mole of calcium. Atoms to moles. What's the relationship? Jeremy?
6.022 times 10
Yep. Thou shalt never put a number other than 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd in front of the word atoms unless it's a given. Okay, so now we've got a problem to do some math. Okay, so I've gone ahead and set that up. 12.3 times 6.022 divided by 40.8. That whole mess times 10 to the 23rd. What do you get for a raw answer? Go for it.
1.8480688.
Okay, times 10 to the 23rd. Okay, and are we in correct scientific notation? Any issues with that? No, it happened to work out for us. So now, what we want to do is take our sig figs. How many sig figs can we have here? Fingers, 3. And that means we're gonna take this 4 and round it based on what follows. So our final answer is 1.85 times 10 to the 23rd. Oh, I forgot my units. Duh. Give myself space to write that. And that would be atoms of calcium. A couple quick checks for yourself as you're doing these kind of problems. If you have an answer that is atoms and it doesn't have any scientific notation behind it, if you're saying something is, 18 atoms, 6 atoms, 323 atoms, you need to check yourself because something's wrong. Either you've forgotten to put your scientific notation in, or you've screwed up inside your factor label. Checking. So let's go through and double check our units here. Did grams of calcium cancel? Yes. Did moles of calcium cancel? Yes. And we end up in atoms of calcium. If you get an answer that's unreasonable, you should go back and double check that. Do you feel prepared to start doing the two-steppers on your own? Okay. I'm going to turn you loose. I'll float around and help as needed, and other than that, that's it.